What do the Ten Commandments really say, and what surprising truths lie hidden within them? Are there secrets about the Ten Commandments that challenge our understanding of these ancient laws? Wait until the end of the video, as we will say a prayer together. Imagine, if you will, a great library filled with countless tomes and scrolls, each one representing the accumulated wisdom of generations. Among them, the Ten Commandments stand not as mere dusty relics, but as vibrant living words that have shaped the moral fabric of humanity. Yet, how many of us have truly paused to ponder their depths, to question what lies beneath the surface of these seemingly simple decrees? In the grand tapestry of human history, the Ten Commandments have often been viewed as a moral compass, a guide for righteous living. But like an iceberg, what is visible is but a fraction of the whole. Beneath their austere pronouncements lie profound truths and startling insights that have the power to alter our very perception of right and wrong. Have we perhaps taken these commandments at face value for too long, missing the richness that resides within their ancient words? In this video, we'll reveal surprising insights and lesser-known facts about the Ten Commandments that might change how you view them. Prepare to uncover the hidden truths and controversial aspects of the Ten Commandments that you never knew existed. Imagine embarking on a journey, not merely across lands and seas, but through the very corridors of time and thought. Together, we shall delve into the historical, cultural, and theological nuances that have shaped these commandments. We shall lift the veil on their hidden meanings and explore their relevance in our modern world. It is a journey that promises to be both enlightening and challenging, for the Ten Commandments are far more than simple rules. They are a mirror reflecting the deepest concerns and aspirations of the human heart. For the commandment is a lamp, the teaching is a light, and the reproofs of discipline are the way of life. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. Psalm 19:7. As we begin this exploration, let us reflect on the wisdom encapsulated in these timeless words. The commandments, we are told, are not mere dictates, but lamps and lights guiding our path. They are perfect, reviving the soul, and sure, making wise the simple. In their light, we find clarity and direction. In their perfection, we find renewal. The journey ahead promises to illuminate our minds and revive our spirits as we uncover the hidden depths of these ancient, yet ever-relevant divine laws. Prepare yourself for revelations that will challenge your understanding and perhaps even transform your life. Welcome to a journey into the heart of the Ten Commandments. Imagine, if you will, a vast, arid wilderness stretching out beneath a scorching sun. Amidst this desolate expanse, a solitary mountain rises, formidable and unyielding, shrouded in a thick veil of cloud and smoke. This is Mount Sinai, a place of divine encounter, where the Almighty chose to reveal His eternal laws to humanity. It is here that we find Moses, the chosen leader of the Israelites, ascending into the cloud-covered heights to receive the Ten Commandments, the bedrock of moral and spiritual guidance for countless generations. The story begins with the Israelites' escape from the bondage of Egypt, a journey fraught with peril and divine intervention. After crossing the Red Sea and traversing the desert, they arrive at the foot of Mount Sinai. Here, God calls Moses to ascend the mountain, and in an awe-inspiring display of thunder, lightning, and the sound of a trumpet, the divine presence descends upon Sinai. The air is thick with anticipation and reverence as Moses enters the sacred cloud. In Exodus 20, we find the detailed account of this momentous event. God Himself speaks to Moses, laying out the Ten Commandments with a clarity and authority that leaves no room for ambiguity. And God spoke all these words, saying, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." Thus begins the first of these divine decrees, establishing the foundation of monotheism and exclusive worship. The narrative continues with each commandment unfolding like a tapestry of moral imperatives: prohibitions against idolatry, blasphemy, and Sabbath breaking, directives for honoring parents, and commands against murder, adultery, theft, false testimony, and covetousness. Each law is imbued with profound spiritual and ethical significance, reflecting the very character of God and his desire for a holy and just society. The parallel account in Deuteronomy 5 reiterates these commands, emphasizing their enduring importance. Moses, in his final address to the Israelites before they enter the Promised Land, reminds them of the covenant at Sinai and the commandments given there. "The Lord our God made a covenant with us at Horeb," he declares. "Not with our fathers did the Lord make this covenant, but with us, who are all of us here alive today." This divine legislation, etched in stone tablets, was not merely a set of arbitrary rules, but a covenantal agreement between God and his people. It was an invitation to live in a manner that reflected God's holiness and justice, a call to be distinct from the surrounding nations. The Ten Commandments served as a moral compass, guiding the Israelites in their relationship with God and with one another. To fully appreciate the revolutionary nature of the Ten Commandments, it is essential to consider the broader context of ancient Near Eastern law codes. Among these, the Code of Hammurabi stands as one of the most renowned. Inscribed on a black basalt stela, this Babylonian code predates the Ten Commandments by several centuries and provides a fascinating point of comparison. The Code of Hammurabi, attributed to the sixth king of Babylon, consists of 282 laws covering a wide range of civil, criminal, and commercial matters. It reflects the values and social structure of Babylonian society, emphasizing justice, retribution, and the authority of the king as the supreme lawgiver. The famous principle of an eye for an eye, lex talionis, is a hallmark of this legal tradition, embodying a form of retributive justice aimed at maintaining social order. While there are similarities between the Code of Hammurabi and the Ten Commandments, such as prohibitions against theft, murder, and adultery, the contrasts are even more striking. The Ten Commandments are unique in their theological foundation and ethical focus. They begin with a declaration of God's identity and his redemptive act in history, establishing a covenantal relationship that is both personal and communal. The commandments are not merely legal stipulations, but divine imperatives that call for a response of love, loyalty, and reverence towards God, and compassion towards one's neighbor. Moreover, the Ten Commandments transcend the immediate context of ancient Israel and speak to the universal human condition. While Hammurabi's code is primarily concerned with societal order and retribution, the Ten Commandments address the inner moral and spiritual life of individuals. They challenge us to examine our hearts, our motives, and our relationships, calling for integrity, honesty, and respect in all aspects of life. In the broader legal and moral environment of the ancient Near East, the Ten Commandments stand out as a radical and transformative revelation. They introduce a vision of justice that is rooted in the character of a holy and loving God, a vision that elevates human dignity and calls for a community built on trust, fidelity, and mutual respect. The Ten Commandments invite us into a story that is far greater than ourselves, a story of divine grace and human responsibility, a story that continues to shape and inspire our moral imagination to this day. As we embark upon the storied journey of the Israelites, we must first cast our minds back to the land of Egypt, a realm of both grandeur and oppression. The Israelites, once welcomed guests, had become the enslaved, their labor the backbone of Egypt's might. It was into this crucible of suffering that Moses was born, a child destined to alter the course of history. The narrative unfolds with divine intervention, a burning bush that defied the laws of nature, an encounter that would set Moses on a path to liberate his people. Through a series of miraculous plagues, each a blow against the pantheon of Egyptian gods, the Lord displayed his unmatched power. The culmination of these events was the Passover, a night of both deliverance and destruction, where the firstborn of Egypt perished and the Israelites were spared. This act of divine judgment led to their exodus, a mass departure of slaves turned pilgrims, heading towards an uncertain but hopeful future. Their journey through the wilderness was fraught with trials that tested their faith and resilience. It was in this barren landscape that they encountered both physical and spiritual nourishment. Manna from heaven and water from a rock, symbolizing God's provision and care. Despite their hardships, the Israelites were guided by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, manifestations of God's presence and direction. The climax of this odyssey was Mount Sinai, a place shrouded in smoke and thunder, where the divine would intersect with the mortal. Moses ascended the mountain, entering the divine presence to receive the 10 Commandments inscribed by the very finger of God. These commandments were not merely rules, but a covenant, a binding agreement that defined the relationship between God and his chosen people. They were to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, distinct from all others. The 10 Commandments, or Decalogue, as they are often called, have indelibly shaped Jewish religious and cultural identity. They are foundational, both in their simplicity and profundity, offering a moral framework that has withstood the test of millennia. In Jewish tradition, these commandments are not seen merely as prohibitions, but as guiding principles for a life of righteousness and sanctity. Each Sabbath, the words of the commandments are recalled, particularly the command to observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy. This day of rest is a cornerstone of Jewish life, a weekly reenactment of creation and a reminder of liberation from bondage. It is a day set apart where the temporal ceases and the eternal is contemplated. The command to honor one's father and mother extends beyond familial duty. It is a recognition of the chain of tradition, the passing of wisdom from generation to generation. It underscores the importance of family as the bedrock of society and faith. The prohibitions against murder, adultery, theft, and false witness uphold the sanctity of life, the fidelity of relationships, and the integrity of community. They are not merely societal laws, but reflections of divine justice and holiness. Coveting, perhaps the most introspective of the commandments, addresses the heart's desires, calling for a contented spirit. It teaches that true peace and fulfillment are found not in the accumulation of possessions, but in a life aligned with divine will. In daily Jewish worship and life, the 10 Commandments are ever present. They are recited in prayers, taught in schools, and inscribed on the mezuzah placed on doorposts, serving as a constant reminder of the covenant. The commandments are not relics of a distant past, but living words that continue to shape the moral and spiritual fabric of Jewish identity. The significance of the 10 Commandments extends beyond their religious and cultural roles. They serve as a lens through which the Israelites viewed their relationship with God and with one another. Each commandment is a thread in the intricate tapestry of Jewish life, interwoven with history, tradition, and faith. Through obedience to these divine precepts, the Israelites found their unique identity and purpose as a people chosen to reflect God's holiness to the world. Imagine, if you will, the vast tapestry of Western civilization, woven intricately with threads of legal and moral codes. Among these threads, the 10 Commandments stand out with an undeniable brilliance, casting a light that has illuminated the path of justice and morality for millennia. These ancient edicts, given to Moses on the rugged heights of Mount Sinai, have left an indelible mark on the Western legal tradition, shaping not only the letter of the law, but the very spirit in which it is interpreted and applied. In exploring the impact of the 10 Commandments on Western legal systems, one must begin with the foundational principles of justice, fairness, and equity. The commandments serve as a moral compass, guiding the hands of legislators and judges alike. The prohibition against murder, enshrined in the Sixth Commandment, finds its echoes in the legal statutes against homicide, forming the bedrock of the right to life. Similarly, the Eighth Commandment's injunction against theft underpins laws protecting property rights, a cornerstone of modern legal systems. Consider the profound influence of the Fourth Commandment, which sanctifies a day of rest. This notion, seemingly simple, has permeated labor laws, ensuring that workers are afforded rest and rejuvenation. The concept of the Sabbath has thus transcended religious observance, embedding itself into the secular framework of labor rights and welfare. Yet, the influence of the Ten Commandments extends beyond individual laws to shape the broader ethos of Western jurisprudence. The principles of truth and integrity, as enunciated in the Ninth Commandment's prohibition against bearing false witness, have fostered a culture of honesty and transparency within the legal process. This commandment reinforces the importance of truthful testimony, underpinning the credibility and reliability essential for the administration of justice. The Ten Commandments have also imparted a sense of moral duty and responsibility, reminding those in power of their obligations towards the governed. This moral underpinning is evident in the social contract theories that have influenced Western political thought, advocating for a just and equitable society grounded in mutual respect and moral accountability. To appreciate the full extent of the Ten Commandments' influence on Western law, one must recognize their role in shaping the ethical frameworks within which laws are conceived and interpreted. These ancient precepts have provided a moral foundation, fostering a sense of justice that transcends mere legality, aiming instead at the higher ideals of fairness and human dignity. Turning our gaze to the broader religious landscape, we find that the Ten Commandments hold a unique yet universal appeal. Across the tapestry of world religions, these commandments resonate with a common moral intuition, albeit interpreted and applied in diverse ways. In Christianity, the Ten Commandments are revered as divine law, integral to both the Old and New Testaments. They are seen not merely as rules, but as expressions of God's covenant with humanity, embodying the principles of love, respect, and justice. Christians are called to internalize these commandments, allowing them to shape their lives and actions in accordance with God's will. Judaism, of course, views the Ten Commandments as central to the Torah, given to Moses on Sinai as part of the divine covenant. For Jews, these commandments are both a historical heritage and a living guide, integral to religious practice and ethical conduct. They form the core of Jewish law, halakha, influencing daily life, worship, and communal relations. Islam, too, acknowledges the moral principles enshrined in the Ten Commandments. While the Quran does not explicitly enumerate them, it upholds similar ethical directives, emphasizing monotheism, respect for parents, the sanctity of life, and the importance of honesty and justice. These shared values reflect a common Abrahamic heritage, underscoring the universal appeal of these moral precepts. In Hinduism and Buddhism, while the Ten Commandments are not part of their religious texts, one finds parallel ethical teachings. Hinduism's emphasis on dharma, righteous duty, and the moral imperatives found in the yamas and niyamas, ethical precepts, resonate with the commandments' call for moral integrity and social harmony. Buddhism's 5 precepts similarly advocate non-harming, truthfulness, and respect for others, echoing the ethical spirit of the Ten Commandments. The comparative study of these religious views reveals both the uniqueness and universality of the Ten Commandments. While each tradition interprets and applies these principles within its own theological and cultural context, the underlying moral truths they represent find a profound resonance across diverse faiths. In conclusion, the Ten Commandments, though rooted in a specific historical and religious context, transcend these boundaries to offer a universal moral framework. Their influence on Western law and their recognition across major world religions highlight their enduring relevance and profound impact. As we navigate the complexities of modern life, these ancient edicts continue to guide us towards a more just, compassionate, and ethical world. First commandment, no other gods. Imagine, if you will, standing on the precipice of history, peering into the hearts and minds of an ancient people. In the midst of a cacophony of voices, each one claiming the divine favor of a different god, a singular command pierces through the noise: "You shall have no other gods before me." This commandment, so seemingly simple, holds within it the profound essence of monotheism, a concept that would revolutionize not only the spiritual landscape of the Israelites, but the entire course of human history. In the ancient world, polytheism was the norm. Each nation, each city, even each household had its own pantheon of gods and goddesses, each presiding over different aspects of life: war, fertility, harvest, and hearth. These deities were often capricious and limited, their powers confined to specific domains. In contrast, the God of Israel, revealed to Moses and the people at Mount Sinai, was not just another deity among many, but claimed an exclusive and unparalleled sovereignty. The significance of this commandment lies in its radical departure from the polytheistic norm. It declares that the God of Israel is not merely the chief among gods, but the only true God. This monotheistic assertion is not just a theological claim. It is an ontological statement about the nature of reality itself. The commandment challenges the very fabric of ancient belief systems, asserting a singular, all-encompassing divine authority. To understand the impact of this commandment, we must consider the implications for faith and worship. In a polytheistic context, worship was often transactional. Offerings and sacrifices were made to appease the gods, to secure their favor, or to avert their wrath. The relationship between deity and devotee was one of mutual benefit, with the gods requiring sustenance from humans and humans seeking blessings from the gods. However, the first commandment calls for a different kind of relationship. It demands exclusive devotion and fidelity. This is not about appeasing a pantheon, but about entering into a covenantal relationship with the one true God. It is a call to trust in God's providence and sovereignty, to recognize His authority over all aspects of life, and to forsake all other allegiances. This exclusivity is not merely about worship practices, but about the very identity of the people of Israel. Their God is one, and their worship must reflect this profound truth. In the context of ancient polytheistic cultures, this commandment would have been both a bold proclamation and a source of profound transformation. It set the Israelites apart, establishing their identity as a people chosen and called by the one true God. This theological foundation would become the bedrock of their faith, influencing their laws, their worship, and their understanding of the world. As we turn our gaze from the ancient past to the contemporary present, we must ask, what does this commandment mean for us today? In a world where the explicit worship of multiple gods is less common, how does this ancient command challenge our modern beliefs and practices? Though the gods of ancient polytheism may no longer dominate our religious landscape, the essence of idolatry persists in more subtle forms. The commandment to have no other gods before the one true God is as relevant today as it was millennia ago, for it speaks to the human tendency to place ultimate trust and value in things other than God. Consider the various gods that vie for our allegiance in the modern world. Wealth, power, fame, and pleasure are but a few of the idols that promise fulfillment and security. These modern deities, though not personified as in ancient times, demand our time, energy, and devotion. They shape our values, influence our decisions, and often lead us away from the true source of life and meaning. The first commandment challenges us to examine where our true allegiance lies. It calls us to recognize the futility of placing our ultimate trust in anything other than God. Wealth can vanish, power can corrupt, fame can be fleeting, and pleasure can be hollow. Only God, the creator and sustainer of all things, can offer the true security and fulfillment that our hearts long for. In a society that often promotes self-sufficiency and individualism, this commandment invites us to a posture of humility and dependence. It reminds us that we are not the masters of our own destiny, but creatures who owe our existence and allegiance to our Creator. This recognition calls us to reorient our lives, to prioritize our relationship with God above all else, and to trust in His wisdom and guidance. Moreover, the first commandment challenges the pluralism that characterizes much of modern thought. In a world where the coexistence of multiple beliefs and values is often celebrated, the exclusivity of this command can seem intolerant or outdated. Yet, it invites us to consider the unique and unparalleled nature of the one true God. It calls us to discern truth from falsehood, to seek the ultimate source of goodness, beauty, and truth, and to commit ourselves fully to Him. In practical terms, this commandment calls us to evaluate our priorities and actions. Do our lives reflect a singular devotion to God, or are we divided in our loyalties? Are we seeking first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, or are we chasing after the things of this world? The first commandment beckons us to live with integrity, aligning our actions with our professed beliefs, and allowing our devotion to God to permeate every aspect of our lives. As we ponder the first commandment, let us allow its profound truth to penetrate our hearts and minds. Let us recognize the call to exclusive devotion, the invitation to trust in God's sovereignty, and the challenge to forsake all idols. In doing so, we align ourselves with the ancient faith of Israel and the timeless truth of God's unchanging nature. Second commandment, no idols. When we delve into the historical context of the second commandment, you shall not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. We uncover a world rife with idolatry. The ancient Near East was a region teeming with deities, each demanding veneration through tangible representations. This was not merely a matter of religious practice, but a cultural norm ingrained deeply into the fabric of daily life. The people were surrounded by temples and shrines where idols, crafted with meticulous care from wood, stone, and precious metals, served as focal points of worship. In this milieu, the second commandment emerges as a radical, almost audacious decree. It challenges the prevailing paradigm by asserting a transcendent God who cannot and should not be confined to any physical form. This commandment is not merely about avoiding the creation of statues or images, but is a profound theological assertion about the nature of God. The God of Israel is not one among many. He is the singular, omnipresent Creator whose essence cannot be captured by human hands. This prohibition is a safeguard against the reduction of the divine to the mundane, a reminder that the Creator is infinitely greater than His creation. The significance of this prohibition cannot be overstated. In a world where gods were numerous and their images ubiquitous, this commandment served as a stark demarcation of the Israelites' distinct identity and their unique covenant with Yahweh. It was a call to fidelity, an invitation to trust in an unseen God whose power and presence transcended the physical artifacts of worship that were so prevalent among their neighbors. Furthermore, this commandment was a direct counter to the human tendency to seek control over the divine. An idol, after all, can be possessed, manipulated, and contained, but the God of Israel cannot be controlled. He is sovereign, unbounded, and free. This aspect of the commandment underscores a fundamental aspect of faith, the recognition of God's ultimate authority and our position as His creations, subject to His will and not the other way around. Fast forward to the modern era, and the literal idols of ancient times may seem distant and irrelevant. However, the essence of idolatry, placing anything in a position of ultimate importance and devotion over God, remains a poignant challenge. Today, idols are not crafted from stone or wood, but are formed in the shapes of our desires, ambitions, and obsessions. They manifest in the relentless pursuit of wealth, the insatiable hunger for power, the ceaseless chase of fame, and the undying allegiance to material success. In our contemporary world, idolatry takes on subtler, yet equally insidious forms. Consider the ubiquitous presence of technology in our lives. While it brings undeniable benefits, it also poses the risk of becoming an idol. The constant connectivity and the allure of virtual worlds can draw our attention and devotion away from the spiritual realm. The devices we hold in our hands often command more reverence and time than we devote to prayer, reflection, and genuine human connection. Similarly, the idol of consumerism demands our worship in temples we call malls and online marketplaces. Here, the promise of happiness is packaged and sold, urging us to find fulfillment in the accumulation of goods. This modern idolatry whispers that our worth is tied to what we own, rather than who we are as beings created in the image of God. The second commandment calls us to examine our hearts and lives critically. It asks us to identify the idols that vie for the throne of our devotion and to dismantle them. This is not a one-time act, but a continuous process of reorienting our lives towards the true source of meaning and purpose. It is a call to prioritize our relationship with God above all else, recognizing that He alone is worthy of our ultimate loyalty and love. Moreover, this commandment invites us to understand the impact of idolatry on our spiritual life. Idols, in any form, distort our perception of the divine. They reduce the infinite God to finite constructs, thus limiting our experience and understanding of His majesty and grace. By placing our trust in idols, we rob ourselves of the depth and richness of a genuine relationship with God. In this sense, the second commandment is not merely a prohibition, but a profound invitation. It beckons us to embrace a life of true worship, free from the shackles of idolatry. It encourages us to seek and celebrate the presence of God in all its fullness, unmediated by the false gods that the world offers. It calls us to live in the light of His truth, acknowledging Him as the ultimate source of our being and the rightful recipient of our devotion. Third commandment, name in vain. Imagine, if you will, the name of God as not merely a collection of letters, but as a sacred emblem, a symbol imbued with the weight and majesty of the divine Himself. To invoke His name is to draw upon the very essence of holiness, to acknowledge a presence far beyond the mundane. This commandment, then, is not merely a prohibition, but a profound exhortation to recognize and honor the sanctity inherent in the name of the Almighty. In ancient times, the Israelites held the name of God with such reverence that they avoided uttering it altogether, substituting it with titles such as Adonai or Elohim. This practice was not born out of fear, but out of a deep respect for the ineffable nature of the divine. They understood that to speak His name lightly was to trivialize the sacred, to reduce the infinite to the level of the finite. It was a cultural acknowledgement of the gap between human frailty and divine perfection, a recognition that some things are too holy for casual use. The gravity of this commandment is rooted in the understanding that names carry power. In the ancient world, to know the name of a deity was to hold a measure of control or influence over that deity. Therefore, God's command to His people not to take His name in vain was a protective measure, safeguarding the sacred from the profane. It was a reminder that the divine name is not a tool for human manipulation, but a holy invocation requiring utmost reverence. In our contemporary society, where language is often wielded with a reckless abandon, the misuse of God's name has become alarmingly commonplace. Phrases that invoke the divine are tossed about in frustration, surprise, or even jest, with little thought given to their significance. This casual blasphemy reflects a broader cultural trend toward the desacralization of our speech, where the sacred is stripped of its sanctity and rendered mundane. In modern times, the misuse of sacred language is not merely a matter of etiquette, but of spiritual decay. When we invoke God's name in trivial or irreverent contexts, we are, in essence, diminishing the weight and significance of the divine. This commandment calls us to a higher standard, urging us to reclaim a sense of awe and reverence in our speech. Consider the implications of this in a world where the sacred is increasingly marginalized. The casual misuse of God's name mirrors a broader societal trend toward the erosion of respect for the holy. In a culture that prioritizes the immediate and the superficial, the commandment to honor God's name calls us back to a recognition of the profound, to a realization that some things are worthy of reverence and respect. This commandment also challenges us to examine our own attitudes toward the divine. How often do we invoke God's name without truly considering its significance? How frequently do we allow our speech to be shaped by the frivolous rather than the sacred? In a world where words are often used carelessly, this commandment calls us to intentionality, to a mindful recognition of the power and holiness embedded in the name of God. The third commandment, therefore, is a call to reclaim the sacred in our language, to restore a sense of reverence and awe in the way we speak of the divine. It is an invitation to remember that our words have weight, that they can either honor the holy or diminish it. In a world that often forgets the sacred, this commandment stands as a timeless reminder of the importance of respecting and revering the name of God. Fourth commandment, Sabbath day. Imagine, if you will, the ancient Israelites, newly freed from the bondage of Egypt, standing at the foot of Mount Sinai. It is here, amidst the thunder and lightning, that God Himself inscribes on tablets of stone a commandment so profound, yet so often overlooked in its simplicity. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. This commandment, dear reader, is not merely a suggestion for leisure, but a divine ordinance that carries with it the weight of the Creator's own rest after the labor of creation. In the biblical narrative of Genesis, we see God having wrought the heavens and the earth in 6 days, ceasing from His work on the seventh day and blessing it as a day of rest. This sacred pause, this hallowed respite, was not just for God, but a gift intended for humanity, a rhythm woven into the very fabric of existence. In the Jewish tradition, the Sabbath, or Shabbat, begins at sundown on Friday and concludes at nightfall on Saturday. It is a time set apart, sanctified, and dedicated to rest and spiritual renewal. The observance is marked by rituals and prayers, beginning with the lighting of the Sabbath candles, which herald the commencement of this holy time. Families gather for a festive meal, recite blessings over wine and bread, and engage in worship and reflection. The day is characterized by abstention from work, not as a burdensome restriction, but as a liberating cessation, a reminder that life is more than toil and striving. In the Christian tradition, the Sabbath has undergone a transformation, observed on Sunday to commemorate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. This shift underscores a new creation, a new covenant, yet the essence of the Sabbath remains, a time to cease from labor, to gather in worship, and to reflect on the divine. Now let us consider the Sabbath's significance in our modern world, a world perpetually in motion, ceaseless in its demands and distractions. In an age where the relentless pursuit of productivity often leaves little room for rest, the Sabbath offers a countercultural, radical invitation to pause. The importance of rest and spiritual renewal cannot be overstated. The Sabbath provides a necessary reprieve, a sanctuary in time where we are invited to step back from the frenzy of daily life. It is a time to reconnect with the sacred, to reorient our hearts and minds towards the divine. In this rest, we find not only physical rejuvenation, but also spiritual clarity, a reminder that our worth is not defined by our work, but by our being. Moreover, the Sabbath calls us to community. In setting aside this day, we join with others in a collective rhythm of rest and worship. It is a time to strengthen relationships, to engage in meaningful conversations, and to offer and receive support. The communal aspect of the Sabbath fosters a sense of belonging and shared purpose, grounding us in a larger narrative that transcends our individual endeavors. In a society that often glorifies busyness and equates success with perpetual activity, the Sabbath challenges us to embrace stillness and contemplation. It beckons us to recognize that true rest is an act of trust, an acknowledgement that the world continues to turn even as we cease from our labors. In this act of resting, we affirm our faith in a God who sustains all things, a God who invites us into his own rest. Thus, the fourth commandment, though ancient, speaks powerfully to our contemporary context. It is a timeless call to remember the Sabbath, to keep it holy, and in doing so, to find rest for our bodies, renewal for our spirits, and a deeper connection with the divine and with one another. Let us then heed this call, and in the quiet of the Sabbath, discover the profound gift of rest. Fifth commandment, honor parents. In the heart of every ancient society, from the bustling cities of Mesopotamia to the pastoral hills of Israel, lay the family. The family was not merely a unit of biological relation, but a microcosm of the societal structure, a reflection of the greater world in miniature. It was within this intimate sphere that the fifth commandment emerged, a commandment that speaks to the very essence of human relational dynamics. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. To truly grasp the weight of this commandment, one must first understand the role of the family in ancient times. Unlike our contemporary view, where individualism often takes precedence, the ancient family was a tightly knit collective, a sanctuary of mutual dependency and respect. The father, often the patriarch, was not just a figurehead, but a symbol of authority, wisdom, and protection. The mother, the matriarch, was the heart of the home, embodying nurturing care, sustenance, and the continuity of tradition. In this context, honoring one's parents was not a mere suggestion. It was a fundamental pillar supporting the very structure of society. It was an acknowledgement of the generational continuity, a recognition that the wisdom and sacrifices of the parents were the very foundation upon which the future was built. To honor one's parents was to honor the past, to respect the roots from which one grew, and to ensure the stability and prosperity of the family tree. In modern times, while the structure of the family may have evolved, the essence of this commandment remains profoundly relevant. The family, regardless of its form, remains the primary sphere of socialization, where values, traditions, and norms are transmitted from one generation to the next. In a world where the bonds of family are often tested by the tides of individualism and technological advancements, the call to honor one's parents serves as a timeless reminder of the importance of maintaining these sacred relationships. The implications of this commandment extend far beyond the confines of the family home. They ripple outward, influencing the very fabric of society. When we honor our parents, we engage in a practice that fosters respect, responsibility, and continuity. These are virtues that do not remain isolated within the family, but radiate outward, shaping the community and ultimately the nation. Respect for parents instills a broader respect for authority and tradition. It teaches individuals to value the wisdom of those who have come before, to listen to the voices of experience, and to recognize that we are part of a larger story that spans generations. This respect for authority and tradition is essential for the stability of any society. It creates a culture where wisdom is valued, where the young seek guidance from the old, and where progress is built upon the solid foundation of experience, rather than the shifting sands of transient trends. Responsibility, too, is a virtue cultivated by honoring parents. It teaches us to care for those who cared for us, to shoulder the burden of gratitude, and to understand that our actions have consequences for those around us. This sense of responsibility extends beyond the family to the wider community. It fosters a society where individuals are mindful of their duties to others, where the welfare of the collective is valued alongside personal ambition, and where mutual support and care are seen as vital components of social life. Continuity is the third virtue upheld by this commandment. By honoring our parents, we acknowledge our place in the continuum of generations. We understand that we are part of an unbroken chain, that our lives are connected to those who came before and those who will come after. This sense of continuity is crucial for the health of any society. It encourages a long-term perspective, a sense of stewardship for future generations, and a commitment to preserving the values and traditions that give life meaning and coherence. In contemporary society, where the rapid pace of change often threatens to sever these intergenerational bonds, the fifth commandment offers a powerful counterbalance. It reminds us that progress should not come at the expense of continuity, that innovation should be grounded in tradition, and that the future should be built upon the solid foundation of the past. In practical terms, honoring one's parents can take many forms. It may involve providing for their physical needs, respecting their opinions and experiences, preserving family traditions, or simply expressing gratitude and affection. In each of these actions, we uphold the spirit of the commandment, affirming the enduring value of the family and the vital role it plays in shaping individuals and societies. As we reflect on the fifth commandment, let us consider how its principles can be applied in our own lives. How can we better honor our parents, not just in words, but in deeds? How can we foster respect, responsibility, and continuity within our families and communities? In answering these questions, we move closer to realizing the profound wisdom encapsulated in this ancient commandment, a wisdom that continues to illuminate our path in an ever-changing world. Sixth commandment, no murder. In the realm of human existence, few concepts hold as much weight and intrinsic worth as the sanctity of life. This profound respect for life is encapsulated in the sixth commandment: you shall not murder. At first glance, this commandment appears straightforward, an unequivocal directive against the act of taking another human life. However, upon deeper reflection, one begins to see the rich tapestry of theological, ethical, and philosophical threads that weave through this divine decree. The biblical foundation of this commandment is rooted in the very nature of God and His creation. The book of Genesis tells us that humanity is created in the image of God, Imago Dei, a truth that endows every individual with inherent dignity and worth. The sanctity of life, therefore, is not merely a societal construct, but a divine principle reflecting God's own character. To murder is to mar the image of God in another human being, to violate the sanctity that God Himself has bestowed upon life. Consider the narrative of Cain and Abel, the first recorded instance of murder in the Bible. Cain, in a fit of jealousy and rage, kills his brother Abel. God's response to this act is immediate and profound. "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground." Genesis 4:10. Here we see the divine abhorrence of murder and the recognition of the value of life. Abel's blood cries out for justice, underscoring the gravity of taking a life and the eternal consequences that follow. Throughout the Old Testament, the sanctity of life is a recurring theme. The law given to Israel emphasizes the importance of protecting and valuing human life. Cities of refuge are established for those who commit accidental manslaughter, highlighting a distinction between accidental death and premeditated murder. The prescribed punishments for murder in the Mosaic Law are severe, reflecting the seriousness with which God views this sin. The ethical implications of the sixth commandment extend far beyond the act of murder itself. At its core, this commandment calls us to respect and preserve the life of others in all its forms. It challenges us to consider the broader spectrum of violence and harm that can be inflicted upon our fellow human beings. In the teachings of Jesus, we find an expansion and deepening of this commandment. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus declares, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder,' and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment." Matthew 5, verse 21 to 22. Here, Jesus equates harboring anger and hatred with the act of murder, emphasizing the importance of the heart's intentions. This radical interpretation calls us to examine our attitudes and relationships, to root out the seeds of violence and discord within us. Moreover, the ethical scope of the sixth commandment extends to issues of justice and societal violence. It compels us to advocate for the vulnerable, to stand against systems and structures that perpetuate violence and injustice. The biblical prophets repeatedly call out the shedding of innocent blood, condemning societal corruption and the neglect of the poor and oppressed. The sixth commandment thus becomes a clarion call for justice, urging us to create a society where life is valued and protected. In contemporary society, the prohibition against murder is enshrined in legal systems around the world. It forms the bedrock of criminal law, reflecting a universal recognition of the value of human life. The legal definitions of murder may vary, but the underlying principle remains consistent. The intentional and unlawful taking of a human life is a grievous crime. Modern legal perspectives on murder encompass a range of considerations, from the intent and premeditation behind the act to the circumstances and context in which it occurs. The distinctions between first-degree murder, manslaughter, and justifiable homicide reflect a nuanced understanding of the complexities of human actions and motivations. These legal frameworks aim to balance justice and mercy, to hold perpetrators accountable while recognizing the potential for rehabilitation and redemption. The Sixth Commandment's influence on contemporary views of violence and justice is profound. It challenges us to uphold the sanctity of life in our legal systems, to ensure that justice is served not merely as retribution, but as a means of restoring and protecting life. This commandment also prompts ongoing ethical debates about the death penalty, self-defense, and the use of lethal force by law enforcement. It calls us to wrestle with the moral implications of our actions and to strive for a society where life is honored and safeguarded. In conclusion, the Sixth Commandment's simple yet profound directive, "You shall not murder," carries with it a wealth of theological, ethical, and legal significance. It calls us to recognize the inherent value of every human life, to examine our hearts and attitudes, and to work towards a just and peaceful society. As we reflect on this commandment, we are invited to align our lives with the divine vision of holiness, justice, and love, to become stewards of life in all its fullness. Seventh Commandment, no adultery. The seventh commandment, "You shall not commit adultery," resounds with a clarity and solemnity that echoes through the corridors of time. In the ancient world, where patriarchal norms and tribal affiliations governed societal structures, the sanctity of marriage stood as a pillar of communal stability and moral integrity. Adultery was not merely a personal failing, it was a breach of trust that threatened the very fabric of society. Marriage, in the biblical context, was a covenantal bond, a sacred union mirroring the relationship between God and His people. This divine analogy underscores the gravity of the marital vow. To break faith with one's spouse was akin to breaking faith with God. The prophet Hosea's poignant depiction of Israel as an unfaithful wife to a loving and steadfast God captures this profound parallel. In the arid landscapes and bustling cities of the ancient Near East, marital fidelity was essential not only for personal virtue, but for the continuity of family and tribe. It ensured the legitimacy of offspring, the transmission of inheritance, and the preservation of social order. Adultery, by contrast, introduced chaos, dishonor, and discord. The betrayal inherent in adultery undermined the trust upon which both family and society were built. The implications of this commandment extend beyond the marital bed to the broader realm of personal and social ethics. Fidelity in marriage serves as a microcosm for faithfulness in all relationships. It demands honesty, integrity, and commitment, virtues that underpin any functioning society. Adultery, then, is more than a sexual transgression. It is a violation of the ethical bedrock upon which human communities rest. In the biblical worldview, the body is not merely a vessel for pleasure, but a temple of the Holy Spirit, a sacred entity meant for honor and purity. Sexual relations within the bounds of marriage are celebrated as a gift from God, a means of deepening intimacy and creating life. Adultery distorts this divine gift, reducing it to mere carnal satisfaction devoid of spiritual significance. The ancient Israelites understood that personal ethics could not be divorced from social ethics. A society that tolerated adultery would inevitably slide into moral relativism, where personal desires outweighed communal responsibilities. By upholding the seventh commandment, they sought to cultivate a culture of trust, respect, and mutual accountability. As we pivot to the contemporary era, the seventh commandment continues to confront us with its stark and unyielding demands. In a world where individual autonomy and personal gratification often reign supreme, the call to marital fidelity appears countercultural, even quaint. Yet the timeless wisdom of this commandment speaks to the enduring human need for stable, trustworthy relationships. Infidelity today manifests in myriad forms, from clandestine affairs to the more insidious betrayals facilitated by digital technology. The ease with which one can now connect with others outside the marital bond has amplified the temptations and opportunities for adultery. Social media, dating apps, and online forums offer a veneer of anonymity that emboldens individuals to seek illicit connections. The impact of infidelity on relationships is profound and far-reaching. It erodes trust, breeds resentment, and inflicts deep emotional wounds. The betrayed partner often grapples with feelings of inadequacy, anger, and sorrow, while the adulterer may face guilt, shame, and the fracturing of familial bonds. The ripple effects extend to children, extended family, and social networks, disrupting the stability and harmony that marriage is meant to provide. Moreover, the prevalence of infidelity reflects broader societal issues. It underscores the tension between societal norms and personal freedoms, the clash between enduring commitments and transient desires. In a culture that often glorifies self-expression and instant gratification, the discipline and self-sacrifice required for marital fidelity can seem burdensome. Yet, it is precisely this discipline and self-sacrifice that the seventh commandment seeks to cultivate. By calling us to fidelity, it invites us to transcend our baser instincts and aspire to a higher moral plane. It challenges us to honor our commitments, respect our partners, and uphold the sanctity of the marital bond. In reflecting upon the seventh commandment, we are reminded that true freedom is found not in the pursuit of our every desire, but in the faithful adherence to our highest values. Marital fidelity is not merely a duty imposed upon us, but a virtue that ennobles us. It is a testament to our capacity for love, loyalty, and integrity. As we navigate the complexities of modern relationships, the seventh commandment stands as a beacon of wisdom, guiding us toward deeper, more meaningful connections. It calls us to cherish the gift of marriage, to honor our vows, and to build lives grounded in trust and faithfulness. In doing so, we reflect the divine love that is faithful and unchanging, a love that calls us to be faithful in return. Eighth commandment, no stealing. The eighth commandment, you shall not steal, stands as a pillar of ethical conduct, a sentinel guarding the sanctity of property and the integrity of human relationships. In the ancient world, as in our own, the respect for another's property is a fundamental prerequisite for societal harmony. It is a recognition that what belongs to another is not ours to take, that boundaries exist which must not be transgressed. To steal is to breach these boundaries, to violate the trust that binds communities together. In contemplating the significance of respecting others' property, we must first understand that property is more than mere possession. It is an extension of oneself, a manifestation of one's labor, effort, and creativity. To steal is to undermine the very essence of personal dignity and the fruits of one's toil. This commandment, therefore, calls us to honor not just material possessions, but the intrinsic value of human endeavor and the rightful ownership that flows from it. Trust, then, is the lifeblood of any community. It is the invisible thread that weaves together the fabric of society, allowing individuals to coexist and cooperate. When trust is broken, the fabric unravels and chaos ensues. The prohibition against stealing is thus a safeguard of this trust, ensuring that we can live and work together in an environment of mutual respect and confidence. Without trust, commerce would falter, relationships would crumble, and the very notion of community would be imperiled. Consider the small acts of trust we engage in daily. Leaving our belongings in public places, conducting transactions with the expectation of honesty, and sharing resources within a community. Each of these acts is underpinned by an unspoken agreement that others will respect our property as we respect theirs. The Eighth Commandment enshrines this agreement, embedding it within the moral framework that guides our interactions. In the modern world, the Eighth Commandment's injunction against stealing addresses a broad spectrum of ethical concerns, from the blatant acts of theft to the more subtle forms of dishonesty that pervade our lives. Theft, in its many guises, is a breach of justice and a betrayal of trust, and its ramifications are felt deeply across all levels of society. At the most basic level, theft undermines the sense of security that is essential for personal and communal well-being. The act of stealing instills fear and mistrust, creating an environment where individuals are perpetually on guard, wary of their neighbors and surroundings. This erosion of trust has far-reaching implications, disrupting the peace and cohesion that are vital for a thriving society. Beyond the obvious forms of theft, burglary, robbery, and larceny, lie the more insidious manifestations of dishonesty, fraud, embezzlement, and corruption. These acts, though often concealed beneath a veneer of legality, are no less destructive. They siphon resources, erode public trust, and perpetuate inequality. The corporate executive who embezzles funds, the public official who engages in corruption, and the individual who commits tax evasion all partake in a form of theft that corrodes the moral fabric of society. In the realm of business, the principle of respecting others' property translates into ethical practices that promote transparency and fairness. Honest dealings, fair wages, and responsible stewardship of resources are all extensions of the Eighth Commandment. Companies that engage in deceptive practices, exploit workers, or harm the environment are, in essence, violating the spirit of this commandment, prioritizing profit over integrity and communal well-being. Furthermore, the digital age has introduced new dimensions to the concept of theft. Intellectual property theft, cybercrime, and data breaches represent modern challenges that require a re-examination of the principles underlying the Eighth Commandment. In a world where information is a valuable commodity, the unauthorized access and use of data are acts of theft that carry significant ethical and legal consequences. The commandment's call to respect property must now extend to the digital realm, advocating for the protection of intellectual property and personal information. The Eighth Commandment also invites us to reflect on the broader implications of wealth and poverty. In a society marked by stark economic disparities, The commandment challenges us to consider the justice of our economic systems and the moral obligations we have towards those in need. While the commandment explicitly prohibits taking what belongs to another, it implicitly calls us to ensure that everyone has access to the resources necessary for a dignified life. The systemic injustices that result in poverty and deprivation are in a sense a collective form of theft, depriving individuals of the opportunities and resources that rightfully belong to them. The eighth commandment, "You shall not steal," is more than a simple prohibition. It is a profound affirmation of trust, respect, and justice. It calls us to honor the property and dignity of others, to foster an environment of trust and integrity, and to address the ethical challenges of both ancient and modern contexts. As we navigate the complexities of contemporary life, this commandment remains a timeless guide, urging us to build a society grounded in mutual respect and moral responsibility. Ninth commandment, false witness. In the hallowed halls of justice, where the scales of equity are delicately balanced, the ninth commandment resounds with a clarion call: "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor." At first glance, this commandment might appear straightforward, a simple prohibition against lying in a legal setting. Yet as we delve deeper into its implications, we uncover a profound truth about the very fabric of justice and the essential role that truthfulness plays within it. The ancient Israelites, living in a society where oral testimony was often the primary means of adjudicating disputes, understood well the power of words to shape reality. A false testimony could mean the difference between freedom and slavery, honor and disgrace, life and death. Thus, this commandment safeguards the sanctity of justice, ensuring that the pursuit of truth remains untainted by deceit. Justice, in its truest form, is not merely the mechanical application of laws, but the harmonious alignment of human actions with divine order. For justice to be served, it must be grounded in truth. Without truth, justice becomes a mockery, a facade that conceals the corruption within. Bearing false witness undermines this foundation, creating a ripple effect that distorts reality and erodes trust. Consider the courtroom, a microcosm of society where the quest for justice is most visible. Here, witnesses swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, acknowledging the solemn responsibility that rests upon their words. A single lie, a twist of facts, can derail the entire process, leading to wrongful convictions or the acquittal of the guilty. The ninth commandment, therefore, is not just a prohibition against lying. It is a divine mandate to uphold the integrity of justice. As we shift our gaze to the present, we must ask, how does this ancient commandment speak to our modern world? In an age where information flows ceaselessly and truth seems increasingly malleable, the ninth commandment remains a beacon, guiding us back to the fundamental principles of honesty and integrity. In the legal realm, the commandment's relevance is as critical as ever. Perjury, or the act of lying under oath, is a serious offense that strikes at the heart of the judicial system. The consequences of bearing false witness in a court of law can be severe, leading to miscarriages of justice that harm not only the individuals directly involved, but the entire community. The ninth commandment calls us to a higher standard, reminding us that truthfulness is not merely a legal obligation, but a moral imperative. Beyond the courtroom, the commandment's reach extends to all areas of life. In our personal relationships, honesty forms the bedrock of trust. Without it, relationships crumble and communities fracture. The act of bearing false witness, whether through outright lies or subtle distortions of the truth, sows discord and undermines the mutual respect that binds us together. In the realm of public discourse, the commandment takes on new dimensions. With the advent of social media and the proliferation of news outlets, the lines between fact and fiction have become increasingly blurred. The spread of misinformation and the deliberate manipulation of facts for personal or political gain are modern manifestations of bearing false witness. The ninth commandment challenges us to engage with information critically, to seek the truth diligently, and to resist the temptation to distort reality for our own ends. Moreover, the commandment invites us to reflect on the ethical responsibilities of those who wield the power of words: journalists, educators, leaders, and influencers. Their testimonies shape public opinion and influence the course of events. The integrity of their words is paramount, for with great power comes great responsibility. Upholding the ninth commandment in these spheres means committing to accuracy, transparency, and honesty, even when it is inconvenient or unpopular. In our daily lives, the commandment calls us to practice honesty in all our dealings, whether in business, where trust is the currency of commerce, or in our personal interactions, where honesty fosters genuine connections. The principles of the ninth commandment guide us toward a life of integrity. It reminds us that every falsehood, no matter how small, chips away at the foundation of trust upon which our communities are built. As we ponder the ninth commandment, let us consider its profound implications for our pursuit of justice and the cultivation of trust in our world today. In an era where truth is often contested and integrity is frequently compromised, the commandment stands as a timeless reminder of the vital role that honesty plays in maintaining the harmony and justice that reflect the divine order. Let us therefore strive to be bearers of truth in all our words and actions, upholding the principles of justice and integrity in every aspect of our lives. 10th commandment, coveting. The 10th commandment, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's, stands as a unique directive among the Decalogue. Unlike the other commandments, which primarily govern external actions, this one probes the hidden recesses of the human heart. It addresses the inner world of desires, ambitions, and yearnings, thereby illuminating the profound connection between our inner dispositions and our outward behaviors. To covet is to desire wrongfully, inordinately, or without due regard for the rights of others. It is the seedbed from which many other sins sprout. Envy, resentment, theft, and even violence can all trace their roots back to insidious inclination. Coveting disrupts the peace of the heart, fostering a restless spirit perpetually dissatisfied with what it has and always grasping for what it does not. It is, in essence, a rebellion against the providential order established by God, an assertion that His provisions for us are insufficient. The dangers of coveting are manifold. First, it distorts our perception of reality. When we covet, we see not the intrinsic value of things, but only their potential to satisfy our own desires. We become blind to the inherent worth and dignity of others, reducing them to mere obstacles or instruments in our pursuit of happiness. This mindset erodes the very foundation of genuine relationships, built on mutual respect and love. Furthermore, coveting breeds discontent. It is an insatiable hunger that grows the more it is fed. As we fixate on what we lack, we lose sight of the blessings we possess. Gratitude withers in the shadow of envy, and a corrosive bitterness takes its place. This internal turmoil inevitably spills over into our actions, prompting behaviors that are detrimental to both ourselves and our communities. The antidote to coveting, as suggested by the commandment itself, is contentment and gratitude. Contentment is not complacency, but a deep-seated trust in God's provision. It is the recognition that our worth is not measured by our possessions, but by our relationship with the Creator. Gratitude, on the other hand, is the active practice of recognizing and celebrating the goodness that permeates our lives, regardless of our material circumstances. Cultivating contentment and gratitude requires a conscious shift in perspective. It involves redirecting our focus from what we lack to what we have, from comparing ourselves to others to recognizing our unique journey and the specific blessings that accompany it. It is a call to live in the present, appreciating the gifts of each moment without constantly yearning for more. In the modern world, the 10th commandment's relevance is both profound and urgent. We live in an age marked by unprecedented access to information and unprecedented exposure to the lives of others. Social media, advertising, and the pervasive culture of consumerism amplify our natural inclinations to covet. We are bombarded daily with images of affluence, success, and happiness that seem perpetually just out of reach. The temptation to measure our worth against these idealized portrayals is ever present. Materialism, the belief that physical possessions and wealth are the primary sources of happiness, is a modern manifestation of coveting. It drives individuals to accumulate more, not out of necessity, but in the pursuit of a fleeting sense of fulfillment. This relentless quest for more money, more status, more things, often leads to a hollow existence, where the true sources of joy and peace are overshadowed by the never-ending race to keep up with societal expectations. Addressing materialism requires a countercultural stance. It involves redefining success and happiness in terms that are not dictated by consumer culture. It means finding satisfaction in the simple, the enduring, and the relational. By fostering a sense of community, where relationships are valued over possessions, we can begin to dismantle the structures that perpetuate covetousness. Moreover, the commandment invites us to reflect on the nature of our desires. Are they aligned with the values of justice, compassion, and love, or are they driven by selfish ambition and envy? By scrutinizing our motivations, we can begin to purify our desires, directing them towards that which truly nourishes the soul. In practical terms, combating covetousness might involve intentional acts of simplicity and generosity. Choosing to live with less, to share our resources, and to give without expecting anything in return can be powerful practices that counter the pull of materialism. These actions not only free us from the tyranny of possessions, but also open our hearts to deeper, more meaningful experiences of connection and joy. The 10th commandment is a timeless call to examine our hearts and align our desires with the divine will. It challenges us to reject the insidious pull of coveting and embrace a life marked by contentment, gratitude, and generosity. In doing so, we not only fulfill the letter of the law, but enter into the spirit of a deeper, more authentic relationship with God and our fellow human beings. To delve into the symbolic and deeper meanings of the 10 Commandments is to embark on a journey into the heart of human morality and divine intention. These ancient edicts, etched into stone and carried down through millennia, are far more than mere rules. They are profound symbols that point to the eternal truths of our existence. Take, for instance, the first commandment, "You shall have no other gods before me." On the surface, it appears as a straightforward call to monotheism, a rejection of the polytheistic practices surrounding the Israelites. Yet beneath this command lies a deeper symbolic truth, the call to absolute allegiance and the recognition of a singular source of all that is good and holy. It is not merely about the rejection of other deities, but about the alignment of one's life with the ultimate reality that is God. It speaks to the ordering of our loves, the prioritization of our deepest commitments, and the foundation upon which all ethical life must be built. The second commandment, which forbids the making of idols, similarly transcends its literal meaning. It is a rejection of reducing the infinite to the finite, a warning against the human tendency to create gods in our own image, to confine the divine within the limits of our understanding and control. In forbidding idols, this commandment calls us to recognize the transcendence of God, to embrace the mystery and the majesty that eludes our grasp and defies our categories. It is a call to worship in spirit and truth, to seek the divine, not in the tangible and the crafted, but in the ineffable and the eternal. The third commandment, which commands us not to take the name of the Lord in vain, is a profound exhortation to reverence. The name of God, in biblical thought, is not merely a label, but a revelation of his character and his presence. To misuse his name is to trivialize the holy, to treat with contempt that which is sacred. This commandment invites us to a deeper awareness of the sacredness that permeates our world and our words, to a mindful recognition of the divine presence in every aspect of life. The fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy, offers a rhythm of work and rest that reflects the very nature of creation. It is not simply a rule about taking a day off. It is a profound statement about the nature of time and the human need for rest and reflection. In a world that values productivity above all, this commandment calls us to remember that we are not merely economic beings, but spiritual ones, that our worth is not defined by our work, but by our relationship with the Creator. It is an invitation to enter into the divine rest, to cease from our labors and find refreshment for our souls. The fifth commandment, honor your father and your mother, speaks to the foundational role of the family in human society. Yet it also points beyond the family to the broader principle of respect and authority. It teaches us about the importance of honoring those who have given us life and wisdom, about the social structures that sustain and nurture human community. It is a commandment that calls us to gratitude and humility, to recognize our dependence on others and our responsibility to those who come after us. The sixth commandment, you shall not murder, affirms the sanctity of human life. But its deeper meaning lies in the recognition of the image of God in every person. To take a life is to desecrate the divine image, to destroy that which God has declared holy. This commandment calls us to a profound respect for the dignity of every human being, to a commitment to life and peace in all our actions and relationships. The seventh commandment, you shall not commit adultery, is not merely a prohibition of marital infidelity, but a call to faithfulness and integrity in all our relationships. It speaks to the sacredness of the covenant bond, the trust that is at the heart of all true love. This commandment invites us to honor our commitments, to be true to our word, and to nurture the bonds of love and trust that sustain human community. The eighth commandment, you shall not steal, affirms the right to property, but it also challenges us to a deeper understanding of justice and generosity. It calls us to respect the rights of others, to recognize the value of their labor and their possessions. Yet it also invites us to a spirit of generosity, to share our resources and to seek the common good. The ninth commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, speaks to the importance of truth and justice. It calls us to honesty and integrity in all our dealings, to a commitment to the truth that sustains trust and justice in society. This commandment challenges us to speak the truth in love, to seek justice, and to protect the innocent. The 10th commandment, you shall not covet, addresses the desires of the heart. It calls us to contentment and gratitude, to recognize the sufficiency of God's provision, and to resist the insidious pull of envy and greed. This commandment invites us to a deeper trust in God's goodness, to a life of simplicity and generosity. In exploring these symbolic and deeper meanings, we uncover the profound wisdom and enduring relevance of the 10 Commandments. They are not merely ancient rules, but timeless truths that speak to the deepest needs and aspirations of the human heart. They call us to a life of holiness, justice, and love, to a relationship with God and with one another that reflects the divine image in which we are made. When we approach the 10 Commandments, we often do so with a sense of reverence and finality, viewing them as immutable laws etched in stone. Yet history reveals that these ancient precepts have been the subject of much debate and scrutiny. Like a diamond refracting light into a spectrum of colors, the commandments have been interpreted and reinterpreted, each angle revealing new insights and sparking fresh controversies. Consider, for instance, the commandment, "You shall have no other gods before me." This directive, at first glance, appears straightforward, a call to monotheism. Yet, theologians and scholars have long debated its implications. Is this commandment an outright denial of the existence of other gods, or does it merely assert the supremacy of the God of Israel over others? This question has profound theological implications, influencing our understanding of divine exclusivity and the nature of God's relationship with humanity. Similarly, the commandment to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy, has incited considerable discourse. Some argue for a literal observance of the Sabbath on the seventh day, as practiced in Jewish tradition, while others advocate for a symbolic interpretation, viewing the Sabbath as a principle of rest and worship applicable to any day of the week. These debates reflect broader questions about tradition, legalism, and the adaptability of ancient laws to contemporary life. The prohibition against idolatry, "You shall not make for yourself a carved image," is another fertile ground for controversy. In the early Christian church, this commandment sparked intense debates about the use of religious imagery. Iconoclasts argued that any representation of the divine was a form of idolatry, while others contended that images served as valuable tools for worship and education. These disputes were not merely academic. They shaped the development of Christian art and worship practices, leaving a lasting legacy on the visual culture of the faith. These controversies are not confined to the dusty annals of history. They continue to resonate today, influencing how various faith communities interpret and live out the Ten Commandments. For instance, the differing views on the Sabbath have led to distinct practices among denominations, with some Christians observing Saturday as the Sabbath and others honoring Sunday as the Lord's Day. These variations reflect deeper theological convictions and contribute to the rich tapestry of Christian worship. Moreover, the debates surrounding the Ten Commandments often challenge conventional understandings, prompting believers to re-examine their faith. For example, the question of idolatry extends beyond physical images to encompass modern idols, such as wealth, power, and technology. This broader interpretation calls believers to a more introspective and holistic application of the commandment, urging them to identify and resist the subtle idols that vie for their devotion. The impact of these debates is also evident in the realm of ethics. The commandment, "You shall not murder," is universally acknowledged, yet its application in issues such as capital punishment, war, and euthanasia is hotly contested. These ethical dilemmas force us to grapple with the complexities of justice, mercy, and the sanctity of life, revealing the profound and often painful relevance of the Ten Commandments in our world. Furthermore, the controversies surrounding the Ten Commandments can lead to significant shifts in belief systems. For instance, the re-examination of the commandment against bearing false witness has influenced contemporary discussions on truth, integrity, and the role of media. In an age of misinformation and fake news, this ancient precept calls for a renewed commitment to honesty and transparency, challenging both individuals and institutions to uphold the truth. In this light, the Ten Commandments are not static relics of a bygone era, but dynamic principles that continue to shape and challenge our beliefs. Their enduring relevance lies in their ability to provoke thoughtful reflection and dialogue, encouraging us to engage with the complexities of faith and morality. As we wrestle with these ancient words, we find that they speak to the deepest questions of human existence, offering guidance and insight for our journey. In conclusion, the debates and discussions surrounding the Ten Commandments are a testament to their profound significance. These controversies invite us to delve deeper into the mysteries of faith, to question and explore, and ultimately to grow in our understanding of the divine. As we navigate these complex waters, we are reminded that the pursuit of truth is a lifelong endeavor, one that requires humility, curiosity, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. The Ten Commandments, far from being archaic relics of a bygone era, continue to resonate with profound ethical significance in our contemporary world. These ancient precepts, handed down from Mount Sinai, possess an enduring relevance that speaks to the very core of our human condition and our moral framework. Consider, for instance, the commandment, "You shall not murder." In an age where violence and conflict seem omnipresent, this commandment calls us back to the sanctity of human life. It reminds us that every person, regardless of their status or identity, bears the image of the divine and is therefore worthy of respect and protection. In a society where life can often be cheapened, this commandment stands as a timeless affirmation of the inherent worth of every individual. The prohibition against theft, "You shall not steal," speaks directly to issues of justice and equity in our world today. In an era marked by stark economic disparities and rampant corruption, this commandment calls for integrity and fairness in our dealings with one another. It challenges us to create a society where trust and respect for others' property are foundational, where the vulnerable are protected from exploitation, and where honesty is prized above personal gain. The commandment to honor the Sabbath, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy," offers a countercultural message in our relentlessly busy and productivity-obsessed world. It invites us to reclaim a rhythm of rest and renewal, to remember that our value is not solely defined by our work, but by our being. In a time when burnout and stress are endemic, this commandment provides a divine prescription for balance and well-being, reminding us to pause, reflect, and reconnect with what truly matters. Each of the 10 Commandments, when viewed through the lens of our modern lives, provides an opportunity for personal reflection and growth. They are not mere rules to be followed, but invitations to a deeper, more meaningful way of living. Consider the call to honor one's parents. Honor your father and your mother. This commandment goes beyond the family unit, urging us to respect and cherish the wisdom and sacrifices of those who have come before us. It challenges us to build intergenerational bonds of understanding and support, fostering a community where the young honor the old and the old nurture the young. In a world that often idolizes youth and innovation at the expense of tradition and experience, this commandment calls us to a more balanced and respectful engagement with the past and the present. The commandment, "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor," speaks powerfully to the importance of truth and integrity in our relationships and public discourse. In an age of misinformation and superficiality, it calls us to be bearers of truth, to speak and act with honesty and integrity. It challenges us to resist the temptation to manipulate or deceive for personal gain, reminding us that our words and actions have the power to build up or tear down the fabric of trust that binds our communities together. "You shall not covet" is perhaps one of the most challenging commandments for our consumer-driven society. It invites us to cultivate a spirit of contentment and gratitude, to recognize the dangers of envy and materialism. In a world where advertising constantly fuels our desires for more, this commandment calls us to a deeper appreciation of what we have, to find satisfaction not in the accumulation of possessions, but in the richness of our relationships and the simplicity of our needs. Reflecting on these commandments invites us to consider how we might embody their principles in our daily lives. It challenges us to examine our actions, our motivations, and our relationships, to strive for a life that reflects the values of justice, integrity, respect, and love. It calls us to a higher standard, to live not merely for ourselves, but for the greater good of our communities and our world. The 10 Commandments remain profoundly relevant, offering timeless wisdom and guidance for our modern ethical and moral dilemmas. They challenge us to live with integrity, compassion, and a deep sense of our connection to one another and to the divine. As we reflect on these ancient words, may we find in them the inspiration to live lives of purpose, meaning, and true goodness. As we draw to a close, let us pause and reflect on the journey we've undertaken together through the labyrinth of the Ten Commandments. We began by unearthing the historical context, traveling back to the awe-inspiring moment when these sacred laws were handed down to Moses on Mount Sinai. We examined the profound and often enigmatic nature of each commandment, delving into their theological significance and their enduring relevance in our modern lives. We discovered the intricate layers of meaning that these commandments hold, challenging our preconceived notions and inviting us to see them through fresh eyes. From the call to monotheism in the first commandment to the prohibition against coveting in the 10th, each commandment reveals a facet of divine wisdom that speaks to the deepest needs and aspirations of the human heart. Now, as we contemplate the enduring significance of the Ten Commandments, we must recognize that they are not merely a set of rules to be followed, but a guide to a life of profound moral and spiritual integrity. They call us to a higher standard, one that transcends the mere letter of the law and penetrates to the spirit of love, justice, and compassion. The Ten Commandments challenge us to examine our lives and our society, to confront the idols we worship, whether they be material possessions, power, or status. They remind us of the sacredness of life, the importance of honesty and fidelity, and the necessity of rest and reflection in a world that often seems to value busyness over being. In these ancient words, we find a call to live in right relationship with God, with one another, and with ourselves. They are a mirror reflecting our deepest longings for a life that is whole, just, and good. As we strive to live out these commandments, we are not alone. We are part of a great cloud of witnesses, a community of faith that stretches across time and space, bound together by the shared pursuit of the divine. As we conclude, I invite you to take these reflections to heart and to join in the conversation. Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights, questions, and experiences enrich our community and deepen our collective understanding. Moreover, we welcome your feedback and suggestions for future topics. What aspects of faith and life would you like to explore further? Your voice matters, and we are here to journey together, seeking truth and wisdom in the light of God's Word. Finally, let us conclude with a prayer, asking for wisdom and understanding as we seek to apply the Ten Commandments to our lives today. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of your Word, for the Ten Commandments that guide us in the paths of righteousness. Grant us the wisdom to understand their true meaning and the courage to live them out in our daily lives. Help us to love you with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. May your commandments be a lamp to our feet and a light to our path, leading us ever closer to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, may you walk in the light of God's truth and grace.